Have you ever felt like no matter what you do or what you say, you're not really seen? Like people around you are ready to disagree with you even without hearing you out. Let's say you're chilling with your friends, you're just casually talking, it's a chill evening, you're with the boys, and you add your 2 cents to the conversation, and it's not even a controversial opinion, and it seems like it's not that you've said anything that's against the grain, but there's always that one fucker who's waiting to jump in with a smirk, just ready to disagree with you, and they can't you know deep in your heart this person doesn't even disagree with you. It's just that you said something, so they have to say something in return to invalidate what you're saying. Or let's say whenever you start doing something new, you're working out, you started creating content, you're trying something new, basically, it's the same person who's going to start talking about why A, you're either wasting time, or B, this is not a productive use of your energy, or C, this is why it's not going to work. If any of this sounds familiar, I want you to lean in on this video because we're going to look into a concept that is very, very relevant to you. It's called the looking glass self theory. The looking glass self theory is a concept that was proposed by a sociologist called Charles Cooley, if I'm not wrong. And the premise was pretty simple. It suggests that your self concept, or how you see yourself, is shaped by how other people perceive you. You observe their reactions, you absorb the feedback, and over time you build your entire identity based on this reflection. So the way that you look at yourself, or your identity in some sense, is not as simple as, it is not objective where it's like, okay, this is how I am. It's based on, this is how other people treat me and this is how they respond to me, so this must be who I am, therefore this is who I am. And the most interesting part is that most of this feedback does not even have to be verbal. It's not explicit, like, oh, Francesco, you're this. And then I'm like, okay, maybe I'm this. It's, for the most part, it's also non-verbal. Let's say if you started to say something, do other people shut up? Do they lose interest? Does their body language show a bit of a turn off in some sense? When you enter a room, are people filled with enthusiasm, or is it like, yaar, ye fir se aa gaya? That sort of a situation. You pick up on even these small points of feedback to build your own identity. So it's not just about what people around you say, it's also about what they do when they're not saying anything. Do they include you in conversations? Do they seem excited to see you? Do they acknowledge your wins? Or do they cut you off? Do they joke about you when you're being serious? Do they make you feel like your presence is tolerated and not appreciated? These are very simple signals, but they do add up over time. Just like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle come together to create like a frame, similar to that. Now, here's where this becomes a problem, right? If most of the feedback that you get from people around you, this could be friends, this could be family, this could be people who you associate with very frequently, if a majority of this feedback is negative in nature, then eventually that's going to take a dig at your identity or the way that you see yourself. It's kind of like that old parable, right, where a young elephant in a circus is restrained by a very thin rope, but once the elephant grows up, even though he has the physical strength to escape the rope because he could just break it by walking away, he will never try because in his head he is never going to be as strong as a tightrope that kept him kept him restrained for a significant portion of his childhood. Now, if you've come this far into the video, it's pretty obvious that you resonate with at least some part of this. So the rest of this is going to be dedicated to what you can do if you find yourself in such a position in your life. But before I get into this, I want you to know that I'm not a qualified professional to be giving you this advice. Any advice that I give you here comes from some amount of experience. Now, the reason I'm making this video is because I've been in the same spot for a majority of my teenage years. And if there was one video that I could show to maybe a 13-year-old Francesco, this would be it. Number one, choose loneliness over low standards. If you're around the kind of people who constantly do things that will eventually take a dig at how you see yourself or your self image, then I want you to understand that reversing that damage is going to take a lot of time. And B, it's also in the meanwhile going to cost you a lot of good things in life. So, a very strong argument has to be made that temporary loneliness or even loneliness for a decently prolonged period of time is far better than being around people who almost who keep chopping the edges of your self identity to a point where you don't have a lot left, because your environment, and by environment I mean the people who you're around all the time, are shaping your beliefs about yourself. And if you're around people who keep minimizing it or keep damaging it to a certain extent, you're going to reach a point in your life where you'd be like, damn, like, theek hai, I was always around people, but how does that help? And I know cutting off from people or cutting off from friends seems like a major, major cost. And I understand that it truly is, but I want you to understand that an implicit cost of you staying around those people and just being okay with what's happening is your potential in some sense. Because if it's taking a dig at how you see yourself, you best believe that you're going to be limited in everything else that you do in your life. You're going to keep quiet in rooms where you shouldn't keep quiet. You're going to take lesser risks. And every time you're about to do something, there's going to be a little voice that wasn't even yours to begin with, that's going to whisper a little, um, a little sentence in your ear that's going to be like, yeah, maybe not, maybe you can't do this, or that. So I know this sounds like a major cost, but trust me on this. A, this is not forever. This is temporary, and B, it's still going to be one that is. Is it going to give? Is it going to give you returns in the long run? That's all I'll say. Number two, reinvent yourself. I have a bit of a controversial opinion here, but it made sense to me and it helped me once I internalized this perspective. If you're around people who who don't treat you the way that you should be treated, that's not always someone else's fault. Maybe you still require some work. Maybe objectively there are things in your life and there are things about yourself that you should be improving. So when I say reinvent yourself, I'm not saying that you deserve to be around people who don't treat you right or belittle you and all of that. What I'm saying is that even if those weren't your friends, you as an individual need to have the ability to sort of stand up for yourself and to make sure that it doesn't happen. And if that's not happening, then you need to change something. So for the next few months or however long it takes, I want you to look at the pillars of your life with some objective reality or some objective lens, your career, your fitness, your social circles, your routine, all of those things. And I want you to make an objective improvement in everything that you possibly can. If you see something and you're like, okay, I can improve this, spend some time improving it. This does two things. Number one, you're creating cold hard evidence that you're better than you thought. And B, you're also creating a foundation for you to bond with other people over. Because trust me, if let's say you're doing a little better in your career, let's say you've picked up hobbies that also put you in touch with other people, or let's say you've improved your fitness and everything, the more number of activities that you get into and the depth that you get into them with, the more you're going to be connected to other people who think like you and do the things that you do. This essentially becomes a ticket out of the temporary loneliness that we spoke about, and it gives you a chance at building very meaningful relationships with other people. And I'll give you an example of this also. Let's say you're trying to get into running, right? You started doing 3Ks and then 5Ks and so on and so forth. And after a couple of months, you decide to join a running club. Now, you're not a beginner runner either because you've done it for a few months and you're putting up decent numbers. But now you're also surrounded by other people who love the exact same activity who are showing up at the same time. You have something to bond over, and it gives you an opportunity to expand your social circle where you don't have to be weighed down by your experiences in the past with whoever it is that you were making do with. Because you made more space in your life by distancing yourself from people who you were convincing yourself that are your friends, who really weren't your friends, and you decided to sort of reinvent yourself and throw yourself into more things and expand your scope of experiences and expertise, you now have access to more people who, for a fact, are probably going to treat you far better. It essentially gives you a chance at reinventing your social circle just as much as yourself. Number three is to have a selection criteria. Look, once you made that jump, right, your life is objectively better. You're away from people who make you feel less than you are. And now you're surrounded by people who bring a lot more potential to your life. You're surrounded by people who you might find out deserve to stay. I don't want you to let the filth come back in. I don't want you to keep your doors open. I want you to change the lock in some sense. And this is so funny because I'm actually going to give you a few examples and I don't give a fuck if they watch. But I remember there were people who, at the time in high school, I thought I was cool with, and I was like, oh, these are my friends. But now looking back, it's like they were barely friends because of the same reasons that I've been talking about in this video. And when you see them like 10 years later or whatever, their entire behavior towards you changes significantly, and it's absolutely insane. It's like you can in your head you're running this little you're running this little equation. It's like, okay, what changed? Why the vibe switch? Why the entry again? Right? It can be very tempting to keep the door open. Don't do that. Just don't, because you've seen the same colors that you had to in the past. There's no reason for you to do the exact same thing and go through the exact same process to be like, yeah, okay, this maybe isn't it. These maybe aren't the kind of friends that I want to be around. Once the door's closed, don't keep it open. It's as simple as it gets. So set your boundaries, enforce them. So you want to set your own boundaries and you want to set them strongly, and you don't have to like have a showdown over this. You don't want to call out bad behavior because that's not necessary and it's not going to help, right? You set your boundaries, you enforce them, and you walk out of rooms where you know for a fact you wouldn't be treated well because you haven't been in the past. And I understand that this entire process can seem very intimidating because as humans, we're hardwired for social connection. So when we don't have enough or when we have to let go of people or groups, it can seem like the end of the world. But here's what I want you to remember. Even if you have friends that you can count on one single hand, but they're kick-ass friends, like they're the kind of friends who would push you, who would support you in your darkest of times and everything. Or if, let's say, you're doubting yourself and they become a source of you to have a little more belief in the process yourself, that's going to have significantly better payoff than having like 20 friends who don't want to see you be better than what you were yesterday. That's all I have for this video. Think about it. This is a bit of a different perspective, and it's one that's not driven by the books, but it comes from my own experience. All I'll say to end this video is that a few grams of gold is is far more valuable than a bucket of rust. So I hope this helps, and if you liked it, I would appreciate you sharing it with a friend because the channel is young and is doing really well so far, and thank you so much for that. But it's only going to continue to grow by word of mouth more than anything else. I hope this helps, and I'll see you in the next.